like to call the special meeting, a public forum regarding the budget to order. And people could please stand for the pledge of flag and then a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. This special meeting is limited to a half hour, and we welcome comments from the public during this time. And I'll have Alexis read her script for everyone.
Good evening. This is Alexis Schack from the Superintendent's Office. If there is anyone from the public who would like to address the board, you may do so in two different ways. If you are using the Zoom application on your mobile device or computer, you may enter your comments into the Q&A feature located at the bottom of the Zoom menu bar. Or you may raise your hand on your computer if your device has a microphone by selecting the participants icon on the Zoom menu bar and then clicking raise hand, or by dialing *9 on your phone. You will be given 5 minutes to speak. Please state your name and address. When you are called on, you will be promoted to panelist. After you make your comments, you will return to attendee status. For clear communication, we ask that you do not place the call on speakerphone. No comments can be made against the employees of the school district or children outside of your own.
Thank you very much. I'll first look around the room. That doesn't look like there would be somebody, but is there anybody in the boardroom who'd like to address the board? If someone's walking oh, that's just Danielle. Not seeing any. Is there anybody online or on the phone?
I do have someone with their hand raised.
Okay.
Hello.
You are now unmuted.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Lakeisha Hyatt. I reside at 104 Benjamin Court, Windsor, Connecticut. I wish to and thank you for the opportunity to address. I just wanted to raise that I believe that this is a time where there is consideration around around funding for school lunch. And I wanted to raise that indeed I believe that this needs to be an area of focus, because I believe that the children of Windsor need to not have to worry about food and lunch costs. I believe that our children are recovering from the pandemic, and they are in need of all types of support in order for them to maximize their academic endeavors. And they need to not worry about lunch, because how can a child learn if they cannot eat without worry? And I believe that it's the least that we can do with our budgetary commitment. So thank you for this opportunity to address the Board of Ed. And again, I just want to raise that I believe there should be free lunch for all children, regardless of the cost. And I say that recognizing what I'm saying, and there are other areas that maybe we should make modifications so that our children can eat and then be able to study. Thank you for this opportunity to address. Have a great night.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else online that wants to address the board?
Recording in progress.
Mr. President, there are no more attendees.
there anyone else in the boardroom, such as Mr. Madison, who might want to address the board?
I do. but
Recording in
Is there a
progress.
regular session after this? Yes. I'm good, thank you.
Hearing that there's no other motion in order to adjourn?
Yes.
I move to adjourn.
Seconded.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstentions? Motion carries either 8-0 or 7-0. I don't, do you know if Jeremy has the ability to?
Did Jeremy type a vote in by any chance? 7-0.
Have the vote as,
Just listening in.
the vote is 7-0.
Yep.
We are adjourned at 6:39. Be back at 7 o'clock. Microphone on. I'd like to call the Tuesday, December 20th, regular board meeting, Windsor Board of Education, to order. First order of business is a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Next item on the agenda is recognitions and acknowledgements, and I don't see anything listed. Is there anything, Dr. Hill? Next item is audience to visitor. Ms. Schacht?
Good evening. This is Alexis Schack from the Superintendent's Office. If there is anyone from the public who would like to address the board, you may do so in two different ways. If you are using the Zoom application on your mobile device or computer, you may enter your comments into the Q&A feature located at the bottom of the Zoom menu bar. Or you may raise your hand on your computer if your device has a microphone by selecting the participant's icon on the Zoom menu bar and then clicking raise hand, or by dialing *9 on your phone. You will be given 3 minutes to speak. Please state your name and address. When you are called on, you will be promoted to panelist. After you make your comments, you will return to attendee status. For clear communication, we ask that you do not place the call on speakerphone. No comments can be made against the employees of the school district or children outside of your own.
Thank you. And for those who are in the boardroom, at the 2.5-minute mark, Mr. Lockhart will hold up a red card, just letting you to wind down your remarks. And at the 3-minute mark, he'll hold it up, letting you really to know to wind up your remarks. Folks who are calling in won't see Mr. Lockhart holding this card, so let's see.
I'll let you know it's 30 seconds left.
But he will let you know. Okay, seeing that, is there anybody who wishes to address the board who's in the boardroom tonight? Don't all rush at once.
James Madison from Fitzmaurice Circle. Back in April, somebody addressed the 57 bus and the fact that it was assigned to middle schoolers. So I decided to read the book because I thought it was interesting, because I am fascinated by the culture war. As most people know, I'm a Republican, and for 15 years I was a Democrat, and part of the reason I'm back on the right is because I fear some of the things that are going on with regard to identity politics. But it's interesting, I have to say, this book doesn't scare me. This is actually an outstanding book. First of all, it's extremely good journalism. The author provides her method in the beginning and at the end, and it's very factual. It also has outstanding character development. And one of the characters is a trans girl, biological male, and the other one is a poor inner-city black male, who actually I think is the more interesting character, because he gets basically railroaded into jail in an unjust manner, which I think is actually due to society's reaction to the fact that the burn victim in this case was trans. And plot spoiler, the kids are being stupid, as young males will be, including myself. I once got the fire department called on me and my friends. Long story. But the incident turned very tragic, but it wasn't malicious in my mind. And if you read the facts of the book, you might find the same thing. But what's interesting is that society reacted so heavily to the fact that the burn victim was trans that no one listened to the kids, in this case, a low-income black youth, who ended up unjustly long in prison and treated horribly. So it's actually a really, really good book. It is not LGBTQ propaganda, as some might say. There's nothing sexual in it. Back in April, somebody mentioned some swears. That was stated from the comments, not the book itself. In the book, there's 2 sections where there's some swearing. It's minor vulgarity. It's non-sexual in nature. So the character development's really fantastic. The trans teenager you get to see into her life, and the young, poor kid who gets basically screwed by the system, is also a very interesting character, but it's phenomenal journalism. Doesn't scare me. I am keeping an eye on the books that are currently being debated about in Dearborn, Michigan. There's 6 of them, if you've heard about that incident. So I am very interested in the books that the kids read and how it has certain aspects of culture, modern interpretation thereof in it. But I'm not worried about this book. I'd love it if my son wanted to read this, my middle schooler. I do agree it shouldn't be assigned. Too heavy. If it's mandatory, ouch, right? But then Ms. Jorgensen told me it wasn't mandatory. Kids had other options. And then I also saw the book list that Ms. Jorgensen sent out today for the 8th graders, and none of the books that are in dispute in Dearborn, Michigan are on it. So that's also interesting to observe. So just some thoughts on the whole situation. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else in the boardroom would like to address the board? Not seeing anyone. Anybody online?
Mr. President, there are no individuals with their hands raised, and there are no questions in the Q&A feature.
Don't see anybody wishing to talk to us tonight. Without objection, I'll close audience to visitor.
Okay.
Next item is the consent agenda, and before I hear a motion, is there any items that you'd like, that board members would like pulled?
No.
Okay, seeing none, is there a motion?
Move the Board of Education approve consent agenda items 4A, financial report, 4B, enrollment report, 4C, food service report, and 4D, human resources report.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstention, motion carries 800. Next item is approval of minutes. Ms. Taylor, do you have a motion?
I do.
Oh, sorry,
Hold on.
sorry, my bad. Just as the consent agenda, is there any items here that, that people want pulled? Any of the minutes? Seeing and hearing none, Ms. Taylor.
I move the Board of Education approve the minutes of the November 10th, 2022 Curriculum Committee, November 15th, 2022 regular meeting, November 29th, 2022 Policy Committee, and the December 6th, 2022 special meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Taylor, seconded by Mr. Panos. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Abstention, motion carries 800. Abigail, you're up. Student Representative Report.
Well, firstly, good evening and happy holidays.
Thank you.
As we become near our holiday break, the school climate has been much more excited. We are excited for that much-needed break. We'll come back with fresher minds so that we can take our midterms. When we return from break, our student leaders will be looking to gather more qualitative data on the dress code from our student body via survey, as well as the broader Windsor community. The dress code is an issue that impacts the climate and culture of Windsor Public Schools. The policies and enforcement of the dress code precipitate harmful ideas that are then relayed to the student body. For example, in the halls of Windsor High, it is not uncommon to see a boy with his pants sagging below his rear end, with minimal interception by those enforcing the code. This is rooted in the absence of policy in the Board of Education's dress code that prohibits pants sagging below the rear. Yet, the no-shoulder policy of the Windsor High dress code, which largely targets the clothing of young women, is frequently enforced. Not only is this rhetoric inequitable, it is dangerous. Studies have shown that inequitable dress codes and enforcement such as our own precipitate the idea in what young women's minds that it is their fault if they acquire unwanted sexual attention based on their mode of dress. This inequity in rules shows our young adults, primarily young women, that their shoulders are more inappropriate than someone's buttocks. Research was done on dress codes of districts close by our own with relatively similar demographics. At our last meeting, the question of uniform dress was approached. Bloomfield approached this issue for the first time in 2010 and has since changed to uniform dress code. Bloomfield demonstrated a large-scale community opposition to uniform dress. During the public forum to receive opinion on the matter, steady parade of parents came to the microphone to oppose the implementation of uniform dress. Many parents cited their children's freedom of expression being at risk, with others saying it was not the role of the government to tell parents how to dress their children. Beyond the parents, students came out against uniform dress within the district. 4 8th grade girls did a survey at their school that received 546 no votes versus 10 yes responses. In addition, they had collected 230 signatures on a petition against uniform dress in school. This anti-uniform opinion is concurred nationally. In a study done by the University of Nevada, 90% of students reported they did not like the uniform dress code. Furthermore, data suggests that there is no correlation between uniform dress or a strict dress code and improved attendance, behavior problems, substance abuse, and there is a negative impact on academic achievement where uniform is implemented. 10th grade data from the National Educational Longitudinal Study was used to test empirically the claims made by uniform advocates. The findings indicate that student uniforms have no direct effect on substance abuse, behavioral problems, or attendance. Contrary to current discourse, the authors found a negative effect of uniforms on student academic achievement. In contrast to Bloomfield, West Hartford took a different approach to the dress code. The policy is based on basic principle. Certain body parts must be covered for all students at all times. Clothes must be worn in a way such that genitals, buttocks, breasts, and midriff are covered with opaque material. This is then broken down into must wear, may wear, and cannot wear categories. In each of these categories, rules are descriptively written out, leaving minimal room for mixed interpretation of what is appropriate. Using West Hartford's dress code as a template for our own may lead to less issues of interpretation, as what must be worn, what can be worn, and what absolutely cannot be worn is clearly and descriptively laid out. Beyond this, the dress code must be scanned for inequities and policies that do not fit the current time, and those standing policies should be absolved. Furthermore, educating those who are responsible for the enforcement of the dress code may be an effective way to limit inequitable enforcement of the dress code. A survey is planned to be sent out to the Windsor community to receive their opinions on the subject. As more data from our own district becomes available, the select policies that our community has issues with will come to light and may be reviewed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for, I appreciate all the work that you've done with this, not just looking at what students think at Windsor High, but looking at what else has been done in the area. Are there questions for our high school representative here? Ms. Taylor.
Not a question, but go girl. I'm so proud of you. Way to go. Way to take the feedback and come back with receipts. I appreciate that information. It makes me want to go out and shoot at a policy, but I can't do it on my own. So I encourage you to continue to, do the temp check of not only the students, but the community. I love that. So I just want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. Way to go, and way to have an impact on, and in such a broad way. You're a senior, and you're pushing this thing that won't have anything to do with you once you graduate. I think it's admirable. Good for you.
Any other questions for our representative? Seeing and hearing none, thank you so much. Next item is the President's report. First of all, it's so nice to see everyone and so many people dressed up in holiday attire as we conclude our meetings, board meetings for 2022. I want to thank all of our staff in Windsor Public Schools, with a special thank you to Sally, Robin, and Alexis for all the work they do for helping us as board members and make our job so much easier. I've been able to get to a couple of events recently. I went to a boys' basketball game at Windsor High School, saw Dr. Hill there, and also enjoyed a great choral concert with a number of members of the board who were in attendance as well. And unfortunately, I was not able to get to the band or the orchestra shows or a lot of other activities. It is such a busy time of year. The next major task this board will be doing is looking at the budget and being led by my Vice President and Finance Chair, Mr. Lockhart. It's one of the major things that boards of education do is to vote on a budget, to establish a budget. In 2023, we'll continue to work on improving student achievement, but again, still with an emphasis on social emotional learning. Just as the issues of having kids healthy, mentally, physically, well-fed are important issues, so that we can get to ultimately, which we want, is students being able to achieve as high as they possibly can. And while there's much joy and happiness in the air, remember, there are often sufferings underneath the surface. And also, please check in with families and friends. This can be a great time of year and also can be a very difficult time of year. But I do hope everybody here enjoys the break that we have. I know Abigail will, especially before having to go to finals. That is my report. Is there any questions? Hearing none. The next item is policy adoption. Is there a motion?
Move the Board of Education approve policy 3542.22, Code of Conduct Governing Procurement under a federal award. Policy 3542.43, meal charging policy. Policy 4116.3, prohibition of alcohol and drug usage. Policy 5113, student attendance, truancy, and chronic absenteeism. Policy 5141.21, administration of student medications in the schools. Policy 6142.1, curricular exemptions. Policy 6146.11, weighted grading and calculation of grade point averages. Policy 6148, policy to improve completion rates of free application for student aid, known as FAFSA. Policy 6172.2, policy addressing enrollment in an advanced course or program in challenging curriculum. Policy 6172.6, credit for online courses. And Policy 5112, age of attendance as a first reading.
Motion's been made by Mr. Lockhart. Is there a second?
I'll second it. Well, I thought we might discuss a few of these.
Yeah. It's only a question of putting the motion.
We
up
just put
there.
it on motion.
We're going to do
discussion.
that after. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Motion made by Mr. Lockhart.
Yeah, I'll
seconded
second it,
by
yep.
Mr. Panos. And discussion, Mr. Panos.
Maybe the meal charging policy that is proposed there. I guess this is an unfunded mandate of some sort here, right? So this potential, what is the implication of when you get, say, a large number of people just refuse to, to pay the meal? I mean, essentially, this is carte blanche for any student to not pay. And I believe that in the last meeting, the statement was made that this would cost, a couple of $1 million a year or something that would have to be made up. I mean, that's certainly not going to be made up by contributions. So I'd just like to know how the administration would address this if, you had a sizable number of students who just said, well, all right, anybody can do exactly what they please on this thing, so you'll have 600 or 800, maybe the whole high school and half the Sage Park or something, or whatever, just not paying for it. Was there any discussion about what the consequence would be?
So, the policy is actually 90% of what our procedure has been for years. This is just formalizing it, the law formalized it, so now the policy reflects it. The only difference from our process compared to this policy is that after 30 meals, we now have to go that extra step and refer that child to our district homeless liaison. So what that's going to do is it's going to now connect us with the family even on a higher level of, if you're not providing lunch or money for your child to eat, we are now going to look at you as possibly homeless and start those processes, which then gets the state involved in everything else. The actual process, we've never not fed kids. I know we've gone up and down. There's been stories, but I know in the past few years before COVID, excuse me, we never not fed an elementary student. So anyone in pre-K through grade 5, no matter what that debt was, always ate. Middle school, it was a threshold, and same with the high school. If they went on a certain number of meals or charges, so for instance, it would be like $15 or $20. If anything was charged above that, we would give them the alternative lunch. But all through this process, even once someone just has even one meal that is a credit, we start our communication home. We send, everything is automated through the system, through mealtime. So parents start to get communication via email, text, phone calls, and then our CAF workers start to call. And then if it gets to a point that we're not getting any headway with our cafeteria staff, the director of school food will then call the family. If we're still not getting or making headway.
Who makes the call?
So the
direct, who?
Originally, the original is an automated email phone call that goes out from the system. Then it's on the food service staff at the building.
Okay.
If there's still no headway, then it gets pushed up to central office for Patty Patton, who is our food service manager.
Okay.
And then if she does not get anywhere trying to speak with the family, we then go back to the school principal for guidance, and then they will then have the social worker, I believe it's social worker, or school counselor reach out. Because there's obviously a significant need that we don't know about if it gets to that level that they're not answering all of those communications. So then the school gets wrapped back in to try to help see what's going on.
Okay.
We've always had debt.
Right, I guess.
You guys,
So
it just-
So simply asking for it is enough pressure that people who can afford it actually eventually pay it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only those who reach a point. You say, so the presumption is then that if someone does not pay, that it's a homeless child.
That's what the law is now making us do. But through all of the processes of calling and reaching out, that's when we will get this, the schools involved, school social worker, even in Christina Morales' Office of Family and Community Partnership, we'll start reaching out, going to the home. What do you need? Is it a language barrier? Is it truly a financial issue? Can we, fill out the forms together to try to get the free and reduced application filled out to see if you actually do qualify? There's a lot of steps that we would take. If none of those actually work and they actually get denied, they're not at the threshold of the free and reduced rate, then that's, unfortunately, now we have to go the route of considering them homeless.
Well, I mean, if the parent doesn't meet this threshold for free and reduced lunch, that means that their income is above this, so
Correct.
obviously it's not a homeless.
I know, but the state is, that's
So the
law
state is
now.
saying now, the only thing I'm objecting to is it doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean,
It doesn't. I mean, unfortunately,
it's, right, is, there's no, is this going to add any additional administrative cost in terms of time? I mean, from what you're saying, we already occasionally spend a certain amount of...
there's a lot of time that's put into when families run a large debt, but when it gets to the homeless part, that's actually Christina Morales' area and her department that gets involved. So yeah, that will be an increased workload for her administrative staff.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. Christina Wykowski, sorry. This Christina with a K.
This is Christina, yeah. Yeah. Well, it's just that, this is one of those things that we probably should see if there's any increase or get an idea of how much time there is, just from the point of view of going to the legislature and asking them, what do we do? This is unfunded mandates, but this one is really, it simply doesn't make much sense the way it is, but it kind of muddles around and eventually it reduces, it'd be interesting sometime, maybe at the end of the year, just to get some sort of summary about how many really ended up going through this process, just to get, so the board has an idea of what to do, you know, when it goes and addresses the legislature. Yes.
I was gonna say, I agree, Mr. Panos. I think that this is just, you know, the legislature likes to get connected to a lot of things. But I would dare say that even historically, prior to this law, schools will have already made a lot of inroads to families long before 30 meals are missed. So they will know what's going on, and all of our departments will have already been activated. So I don't believe anyone's gonna wait till we get to 30 meals. Just someone in the legislature decided, let's put this in law. Okay, it's there, as Ms. Batchelder said, we've already been doing 90% of this already, and I know that the staff is already on top of it well before you get to that many meals missed, so you find out what's going on with the student. It's no different than, you know, the absences. Before these changes, you know, I got a lot of comments about chronic absenteeism, the way they call it now, but the way it's always been historically, student labeled chronic absentee, which originally was 4 days in a school month and 5 days. We're supposed to be contacting the home. If we get nothing from the family, you know, that's a DCF call for potential neglect. So those things have always been in place. So I just think someone codified this and picked a number, 30.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, it'd be a good idea to have some idea of how many students reach that point. Thank you. All right.
And I think it's, the good thing about starting to monitor this is we've had free meals till this point, till just a week ago. So we're looking at a period of time, for all intents and purposes, just about from January till the end of the year.
But we've never really gotten into debt over this. In other words, there's never been enough people that you can't cover the cost with the money that you make from charging. Is that correct?
So no, so it's against the law to actually, to utilize the money that's in the food service account to pay for debt. We can't do that because
Okay, so
that
that has to
money-
come out of the budget.
So the first step is I look at the schools and the principals, and they don't like it, but they
Okay,
can
so it comes out of the
utilize-
school?
That's
school
the first,
budget.
yes,
Okay.
the student activity account, because it's for students. And
Okay.
depending on the how much there is in their account, some can't cover it, so then in the end, it's general fund budget that has to absorb any debt that is incurred.
So,
By June 30th, it has to be resolved, done.
Yeah.
W-
We can't end the year in any debt at.
right, I understand, but it comes out of the budget of the board,
Yeah,
the
or
board's
the
budget.
budget you
Okay,
approve.
So,
Student activities first, Mr. Panos, student activities. And from the school, that's the first place they look for
Right.
the money. Then our budget.
in our budget, okay. Okay, so it's something that we ought to be have an idea, just, you know, it's a few $1,000s, okay, fine, but if this thing grows, thank you.
Anybody else? Didn't know if anybody wanted to comment on do you want to comment on the age of the 5-year-old?
Oh, sure. Well, here, could we look at the FAFSA thing here for a second? What, on the FAFSA one, which is, the idea is that the law says that we have to improve our FAFSA rate, the rate of you know, for our students, that is to say, free application for or whatever, you know, applying for aid and all that sort of thing, going to college, right? Yep. Now, we already have resources that we commit to this process, as, you know, through the school advisors, right? And so what would be different between what this law, well, let me first start by saying that, again, the wording of this law doesn't make a lot of sense, because it says that FAFSA, the rate of FAFSA should, you know, how can we improve it? You know, it just says, whatever it is, you have to improve it. You have to have some system in here to improve it. Well, you know, you may have a district like, I don't know, Farmington, something where where you don't need any improvement or something, or, Darien, for goodness sakes, some of these places.
Windsor.
No, I'm just talking about the resources for we definitely need, people can use help in setting up FAFSA, So, but we already have resources that we commit through the advisors and VPs but even more. Can you explain what we have right now and what is different about it? What requirement would be any different than what we do? That's the question.
So I think with this new policy, it's more of formalizing the process. So we do have, a lot of processes in place. We have a lot of support. And like you mentioned, our counselors, our, administrators at the high school, we had different events in terms of helping students complete the application, educating parents about the application, the process, and what it takes to complete the application. The process here is just formalizing it into our commitment to making sure that we're improving our number of completions. So our baseline is what we in Windsor do. So we're going to look at our completion rate from last year.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying, is there anything fundamentally different than, what are we being required in addition? I understand that we do not already do. What would you suggest that we do more than we already do?
So the goal is always to get better. So keeping in place everything we do and adding maybe incentives for students to complete their application, adding a couple of extra application completion nights where parents and students can come out at night and get support from counselors or from other administrators at the high school to complete the application. Educating parents even more about the importance of completing the application, even if they think their student is not going to college yet or doesn't want to do that yet. Just more educating of the parents and the students and supporting students in completing the application. So we are doing a lot of things. I think it's just making sure that we do even more because it is a big thing for students. It can make a major decision in a student decision in order to go to college or not if they get aid or not. So I think it's doing our part as a district to support kids in doing that.
Yeah, could you help me?
Trying to rationalize something that can't be rationalized here. I'm with you again. We're doing everything we can do. Again, now the legislature has made something sound even more formal. I think I mentioned in our meeting that, for instance, I had to be reminded to fill the FAFSA out for my two older daughters. I know I wasn't going to get $1. I'm not going to get anything. I'm not going to get any money for the one that's in
They're
school
going to
now.
find out how much money you make and take it.
But I don't know about that, but, so I'm going to have to fill it out, and it's, the way it's explained, even when I was a trustee, it's a benefit to the college. So
Right.
I fill it out, and, they'll take care of the students that are going to get aid, but it's not going to help me. So just getting, it's documentation for the college. I don't know if Ms. Clays knows even more, but that's what it's for. But they want more folks to fill it out because it helps the college. That's how it was explained to me. So I just make sure I fill it out every year I had for my older ones, and I'll do it for my younger one, even though I know I'm not going to get anything.
Well, if this amounts to more staff work, I think it would be a good idea to have an idea of how much more you think we will do, as a consequence of this.
No, it's not.
I doubt we're going to do
They
much.
just, basically, you look at the AR portion, right?
Yeah.
They just name, as Dr. Haiti said,
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
there's some more incentives. I'm imagining the counseling department will probably start pushing this sooner in the school year. It'll just be bringing more attention to it. There's really not much.
There's really not much in
Because
the
you
way.
can't make anyone do it. So the people who are going to do it are going to do it.
Right. Yeah. That's it. Thank you. Yes.
Ms. Claes? I better check my phone, too. I think it's on.
I was just going to say that most of the policies that we're talking about are either revised or new as a result of the change in law. And so we have to be compliant, and most of the ones that are new, we already are compliant with. They're procedure that we're doing already, but we're just codifying it in policy. So that kind of my read, the policy committee meeting kind of structure around talking about it all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Panos?
Yeah, could you take a brief look at the Addressing Enrollment in Advanced Course, the program and challenging curriculum? This new policy here is if you look at Roman numeral 2 eligibility criteria, I think it says that at the last bullet point of that says the district administration may, in its discretion, identify and publicize additional criteria, including but not limited to student or parent request. Any such criteria shall be established prior to the commencement. That's just one area that's a little unclear. You know, is it? It doesn't give any guidance what they're saying. It just simply says, well, whatever the administration wants to put in as a criterion. The other thing is, if you know, without even giving any guidance what they mean, so I suppose you could mean anything. So it would just simply be up to the administration, regardless of policy. The second thing is, if you look at Roman numeral 4, talks about guiding principles. I was looking for principles, guiding principles and implementation. That first paragraph, the board recognizes that course access, et cetera, should be guided by considerations, it says, beyond traditional course eligibility criteria. So it, you know, it doesn't really give an idea of what they mean, but they don't define what that means. I assume that means some sort of, you know, one would assume that it just means traditional standardized test scores and grade and course grades. So specifically, the board recognizes that academic achievement and engagement in middle school are strong precursors to high school success. In addition, the board recognizes the importance of engaging with the student's parents or guardians throughout the student's educational experience, reducing barriers to opportunities for advanced courses and programs, and providing a wide range of advanced courses that appeal to students with various interests. Again, I don't see any guidance here in what it is that they're talking about. I mean, they seem to talk about the topic of addressing it, but they don't give any definition of what it is that they're objecting to. So I would assume that we're still going to maintain, regardless of the standards for our, let's say, advanced placement or what we call, you know, high honors or honors courses, and that a student who doesn't do well will receive a grade that reflects the work that they accomplish. That, you know, that this is not some sort of pressure to simply lower the standards. It again is an unclear piece of legislation. Is what it strikes me as. So I don't know. Do you have any idea what they mean by traditional eligibility criteria, or what they mean by barriers to opportunities that they don't seem to be addressing here?
So just to go back to your very first question about the last bullet under number 2. So these are, and I think it is left a little bit open for a reason, because different courses requires different criteria. So I think it would be impossible for the policy to list all the criteria. So teacher recommendation is always made based on certain criteria. So I'm going to use math as an example. We have certain internal criteria based on iReady, SBAC assessment, classroom performance, classroom, grades, midterm, as well as teacher recommendation in terms of students' ability to complete work independently and other, rubrics that we use. So that is one aspect of the criteria that we look at, but then also you do have parents who ask to override the recommendation to either go up or go, not take, for example, if we recommend someone to go to honors, a parent is able to say, I don't want that recommendation, I want my child to go to college, for example. So the criteria is really up to, so every department has a list of criteria on which we use to determine eligibility into different courses. There's also prerequisites. So in order to get to some of the advanced courses, you have to have certain prerequisites. So that is also in there. The traditional eligibility criteria is just your traditional pathway. So you take Algebra 1, you take Geometry, you take Algebra 2, that's your traditional pathway. If you meet certain criteria beyond the traditional pathway, then you're put on a different pathway, or you're eligible to take, for example, AP Calculus versus Pre-Cal, or things like that. So like I said, this is intentional this way because every subject and every course requires different set of criteria as well as different prerequisites.
Well, I'm trying to figure out what is new. I understand that. That what you're describing is what we do right now.
Yes.
Okay, I have no question with that. What do they want?
So, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but you can mark all these agreements all night long. There's nothing new. We're already doing this. And I believe the thrust of this change from the legislature is the prevention of excluding students from taking challenging courses. Because in some places, kids get locked into a track, right? If you've seen them mention 8th and 9th grade, but they get locked into a track, who knows? Maybe the student didn't have the maturity at the time when they were taking their classes. But
I see.
That should not preclude the student from taking the more advanced or challenging courses if he or she decides to do so, and their parents. I believe that's also why they noted, even though we've been doing this as a vice principal, in 2002, I did that at Windsor High. Kids did not get recommended for a seminar. Coming over from Sage Park Middle School, parents wanted their kids to take it. As a public school in the United States of America, you can't deny a kid to take a course. So I think only Boston Latin is the only place where you take an exam actually for the school to get in. So if they want it, the parents, send me a letter physically, email, whatever, say, I want my child in this course. There were times that I actually did write, it's interesting reading this now in 2022, plans with parents because their academic record overall showed they might struggle with this course, but the parent wanted it. And so what I would do so we didn't have people jumping in and out of courses, tell the parent, your child takes the course, your child's in the course for a year. They'll get all the supports they can, but they're not getting out of this course for a year. Because we've told you it doesn't look like, and you're going against all the professionals' recommendations, and so those were plans that we wrote, but there was nothing that we advertised formally, and it wasn't a lot of parents that actually asked to do that.
Right. And I understand we've had students in the past who have been eligible or were recommended for what we now call high honors, and they were, they said I didn't want to do that. So they had other interests that took their time, something like that. But so,
in the state,
but there's nothing new in this legislation. It's the same.
There's nothing new that we're going to have to do.
There's nothing new for us that affects us. Okay.
Just a push from the state. In the state, just another point, even for the public, many of the parents and students should have already received letters over the last year or so from the commissioner. That's something the state is pushing based on how your child tested in the year prior on the standardized testing. SBAC and you will get a letter that said, based on your child's test scores, we feel your child is a great candidate for, advanced courses.
Okay. Can we just take a brief look at the age of attendance, because that's folks of that's a general interest. The idea being that people have often come and asked, well, why can't my child start? And it's it's in January. Their birthday is in January sometime, and there's actually been just as an aside. There were some recommendations to actually make it September, make the day. So, but I think at CABE, Connecticut Association Board of Education, they removed that. They said, we're not going to recommend that they take that up, that be the required, that, as it is right now, we have to accept students if they've turned 5 by December 31st. And so that's been our policy. Now, when you look at our current policy, it's a bit unclear. It says we have to take them, but it doesn't say that we can't take them younger. That's the problem. The law, we just followed the law, and the law was unclear, but most people interpreted to mean, we have been interpreting it to mean, well, unless your child achieves 5 by December 31st, that's the way. But our policy is really a bit vaguer than that, so this is an attempt to make this clear. So we're going to change it to, let's say, because on or before December
Correct.
31st. And so, I think we ought to make that public. This has to be publicized to make sure that that everyone understands what it is, and so that in the future, we don't have this kind of confusion. Someone could actually come to us and say, geez, okay, I think my child is prepared. It may be even younger than this, but child can read, and we don't want to, yet our interpretation of our current policy is that, gee, you have to be, by the 31st, you have to be 5. And a person could legitimately say, well, why don't you take my child? Okay, he's born in February, so what? But they can read, And so this is going to clarify it, right? So, I don't know, does anybody else? We're going to make this similar to this. As it is, children entering kindergarten must be 5 years of age on or before December 31st. I think that makes it very clear. So I just wanted to bring that out because people have asked about it. Do you have any questions, any comments about it?
Any further discussion about this or any of the other? Yeah, I think the practice has been in Windsor of what the policy will now state if we vote on this to support that. It doesn't change anything, but it makes it clear for any parent if they wanted to know about it, or parents can be notified, as you said, that it's very explicit now. Don't know if there's a need for, this is the first reading. Is there a need for a second reading on any of these?
From our side, no.
I don't think so, do we? Probably not, I'd say.
So I would entertain a
President, offer a substitute motion that for all of the policies that have been presented on tonight's agenda under 7B, that we have the first reading and waive the second reading.
Is there a
I'll
second
second
to
it,
that?
thank you.
Motion made by Mr. Lockhart, seconded by Mr. Panos to approve these as a first reading, but waiving a second reading. Any further discussion on this? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Abstention, motion carries 800. Next item is school liaison report, starting with Windsor High School. Ms. Taylor, and then Mr. Wollaston.
Thank you, President Fury. I have minimal announcements. I attended with you and several other board members the choral concert. It was amazing, a lot of good energy, well attended. I also attended the Fall Sports Awards, and it's always great to celebrate our scholar athletes. There were so many added to the CCC all academic team from all sports, from volleyball all the way to swimming and cross country. Just amazing. I want to highlight that for the winter season, we're going into online tickets only. And I want to highlight that because I was at the girls' basketball game, and it was just a lot of scramble, a lot of kids trying to figure out what's going on, figuring out how to get tickets. So I just want to highlight that. I know something went out in the newsletter, and the students have been told, but I think a lot of parents don't know that you have to get the tickets online from now on. Go ahead.
So we will continue to publicize that one, sure, but we've actually started doing it last year.
Yes,
So-
but there's a lot of freshmen, and they did not know. They didn't. I paid
I know
for
we
3 kids
lose.
to get in.
I know we lose. We lose on that, but that's why I just said we'll continue to advertise, because
Yes.
the minute I get the one that says I ain't know, and I'm like, but you went to football games last year.
Exactly.
So I'm gonna just,
As
we're
the
gonna
as
keep
the
advertising.
right as the sports are changing, the kids are thinking that it's going to change. It's not. It wasn't just a football thing because there was issues there. This is like here on out. You have to get your tickets online so that they can keep track of a multitude of things.
Now,
But
can I add in, Ms.
yes.
Taylor? That's actually happening.
Across
We're
the
not
state.
new. We're not the forerunner, but it's across the state and a lot of other places. It's for, like you said, it tracks better attendance and who's where and what, and it also keeps you from having a bunch of cash sitting at your doorway somewhere, and someone having to collect a bunch of cash, and you don't have to worry about those kinds of things. So but we'll make sure I'll have our communications person push out again, reminder, get the app, pay, or go to pay online so they know.
Because I have a bleeding heart, and even though I get in free, I pay for some kids to get in. But anyway, I just want to make sure people aren't left out. Inclusivity, I do. It's a perk of being a board member, Windsor Public Schools. You get in free too, right, Paul?
But I always pay.
Well, here on out, you have to pay online.
Nose is getting longer. Wait a second.
Yeah.
And I want, oh my goodness, and
hide that.
I'll mention that too. There is a way, if you are over, I'm not going to say the age, but if you are a senior, you kind of get a perk as well for Windsor Public Schools, so thank you for that. And then last but not least, tons and tons of sports games happening, all those things across the state. Please come out and support these scholar athletes. It's so amazing what they're doing. Even over the winter break, there's lots of basketball games and things like that. So come on out.
Mr. Wollaston.
Yeah, not much to report from me today. As Ms. Taylor mentioned, I was able to attend the choral presentation they had. It was amazing, per usual. Spectacular talent we have here in Windsor, and I'm amazed every year how it continually shows and shows and shows, regardless of the students, because they graduate, we get new students, and it's still the same level of talent. But I am looking forward to our next SGC meeting. Sadly, we weren't able to have one this month, but I'm looking forward to hearing the good things that we can bring from that group going forward.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Windsor High School? Okay, Sage Park, Ms. Clace and Mr. Halleck. Mr. Halleck?
Thank you, Mr. President. Tomorrow evening, there is a choir / instrumental music concert. It's at Sage Park. It's going to be at 7 o'clock, so we look forward to that. If your student is missing any of their belongings, sweatshirt, gloves, coats, anything along those nature, please check the Lost and Found on December 23rd. The Lost and Found is going to be at the main lobby entrance, so definitely check that out if your student is missing anything. December 23rd will also be early dismissal. And on January 11th, there's going to be a mandatory a meeting for the 8th grade DC trip. That's from 6 to 7 p.m. And just a reminder that As I'm sure everyone's aware, December 26th through January 2nd is our winter break. And that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Claes?
Yeah, I would just add that the staff and the students have been very busy in the month of December. They've raised some money, they've had a toy drive, and they've been participating in a lot of events. So they've done a lot of work in a busy month already, so awesome job. Thank you.
Any question for our reps for Sage Park? Okay, seeing none. Clover Street, Mr. Lockhart.
They're having a winter concert on this coming Thursday. I've been somehow roped in and participating.
Are you singing it?
Like I said, I've been roped in. So yes, it will be Clover Idol. I will probably finish last. But yes, I'm not
Hopefully it's
telling the
recorded.
time. Hopefully it's not.
What time is it?
But I believe it's 2:30 if I'm not mistaken. But I will get a time and send it to the board. But yes, Mr. Farr roped me in pretty well, so I couldn't say no. So I'm looking forward to participating. Well, not really, but I am. That's all I got.
Any questions for Clover? Okay. John F. Kennedy, Ms. Cantor's not here. Does anybody else? Any default there? As a parent default? Okay. Oliver Ellsworth, Ms. Galinsky.
Yes, thank you. I just want to give a quick update on the parent-teacher conferences. They were held the first week of December, and they had an over 80% participation rate, which was really good, and some classes actually reached 100%. So very nice seeing that parents are getting involved with their students even at a very young age. Watchdogs has officially started as of last night, and they had over 40 dads there, which is awesome. And it's so funny because my husband went, and they get in line for this group picture, and it's like a police lineup because there's no females there to help lead them and to be like,
Good one.
no joke.
I demand.
Yes, and so they're
Please cut
told
off
to
her
line
mic.
up. So they literally all line up in a line. And I'm just like, no, because males did what they were
Supposed to be
told.
dads.
Absolutely hysterical. So the picture was actually posted as of last night, I believe. And it's like a panoramic view, but you can't really see anybody. It was very entertaining. But it was great to see that there was such a great turnout, and they attempted a picture. So I don't know. I'll see if I can help with that one next time. They also have Spirit Week this week. The kids love it. I mean, I'm a parent. I think it's absolutely fantastic to do it. Kind of like Clover, the OE does have a holiday sing-along on December 22nd, which is Thursday. Due to capacity restrictions, they actually break it down into two kind of concerts, but all are welcome to attend. If anyone is actually listening, I don't know if there's anyone online or not, but parents can go. I know this is kind of new since COVID, but you're actually able to go. Check out the OE newsletter. It starts at 10 and 2. Just figure out what time your kids are going to be on. And then January 9th is the next PTO meeting at 6:30. It's virtual. Please attend. And then SGC, kind of like the high school, they're trying to figure out a date as to when that will next take place. And that's all.
Great. Any questions for OE? Last
And
but not least at all, Pequannock School. Mr. Pam.
Pequannock School is never least. Principal Mahalko says that students are still bearing down and doing a lot of work. The couple days here, they haven't started into their Christmas cheer normal breakdown mode. As I'm sure that it'll pick up, but he's quite proud of them for doing that, staying on task. December 23rd will be the choral concert at 12:30, and then it'll be an early dismissal. Okay? There's one other item. There's an item on that they have to by January 6th. There's an essay that Senator Chris Murphy puts out for all elementary, middle, and high school students. An essay on the accomplishments of Martin Luther King and it's a competitive essay, and so by January 6th, should have that in. So they're collecting, you know, essays from whatever, you know, from each level. Each level has their own standard for it, and number of words per essay. At 500 words at the high school, but 200 words at the elementary, and I think 300 at the Sage Park level. Let's see. I think it was interesting. And there is PTO is going to have their fundraiser. It's called the Booster, and this is always very interesting. These outfits come in and do this up. I wonder where they got the money, because the amount of money is enormous. It seems to me. I'd like to get into this business. They say that they solicit from all over the country, you know, for donations. You know, so the kids, for example, will do a dance-a-thon of something. So they're going to be doing something like a Zumba or whatever it is this year, and then people, I cannot. I got to look into this. I don't quite understand how they make all this money. But I'm sure that everything's on the up and up, because we've done it many times before. So anyway, that's that. I can say early release here at 1:30 on Friday. So everything is fine at Pequannock. Thank you.
Any questions regarding Pequannock? Next item on the agenda is item 7D, a discussion on adding an agenda item to the January Curriculum Committee meeting. Is there a motion?
Move to add an agenda item to the upcoming January 6, 2023 Curriculum Committee, January 26, 2023 Curriculum Committee meeting regarding adequacy of teaching of logical thought to ELA or social study courses, or as a separate course.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion made by Mr. Lockhart, seconded by Mr. Panos, and discussion. Mr. Pan.
Do you want me to do the background, or just let Mr. Panos go get right into it?
Why don't you do the background, and then we'll refer to Mr. Panos.
This item was placed on the agenda at the request of Mr. Panos with support from Mr. Fury, Mr. Lockhart, Mr. Halleck, and Ms. Cantor. Discussion of adding an agenda item to the upcoming meeting, Curriculum Committee, as a separate course. The purpose of the item is the formal teaching and understanding of deductive logical fallacies and inductive logical fallacies, as well as being inferential logic, is essential for critical thinking. One of the board goals is for students to graduate with an ability to be able to engage in critical and logical thought. Logic is an art of non-contradictory thought. It is necessary for students to be adept at spotting fallacies in their own thinking as well as that of others in order to be able to think clearly about almost any topic. Therefore, the board should know how much logic is currently taught and how much ought to be taught, and to assure that the students are adept to avoiding logical errors.
Further discussion. Mr. Panos?
Yeah, I think that just about sums it up. I mean, the only thing I would add to it is that as part of this is formation of definitions of concepts. That's another part. Typically, this is the sort of thing that is taken as in the philosophy department at typical courses, at typical universities. You know, I'm not asking that we, you know, should go into syllogistic, you know, formal syllogisms and that sort of thing, or certainly not symbolic logic or modern symbolic logic or anything of that nature. But the idea of avoiding a deductive especially deductive, I mean, that should be a gimme. Those things are fairly easy. They're fairly well known. It's just that you do need formal training in this sort of thing, and you need a lot of specific examples, especially at the high school level. It's the sort of thing that is very useful in you know, social studies issues, whether it's historical or whether it's current events or anything like that. I understand that when it comes to rhetoric, obviously this sort of thing is rhetoric, though has it as part. You have to know something about it in rhetoric, but the purpose of rhetoric is to be clear, in other words, to be effective. Well, sometimes, to be effective, it's a different emphasis, and so it's not enough. The purpose here is to make sure that students and people can engage in clear thinking to essentially avoid falling into logical fallacy. Appeal to one's own emotions, appeal to the emotions of others, appealing to respect for what's it called, for expertise. All of these things which are not a basis for making a decision. The common ones, red herring arguments and straw man arguments, and these things abound. That you hear them frequently, almost on a daily basis. You read the news. So the students need, as they go through high school, especially and beyond, I think it's extremely important that they get to understand what it is, and it doesn't mean that a conclusion, obviously, that you have, that someone comes to a conclusion is incorrect. It just means that if you base your opinion on a fallacy, on a formal fallacy, it's incorrect thinking, and you need to look for something else. So I think it's important for the curriculum committee to take this up and see how much, and I'd like to be curious to know how much is currently done in our, and it could be done in social studies and not necessarily
So, Ms.
English.
Can we respond to you?
Sure, go ahead.
Right. I have Ms. Feynman here. To answer your first part of your question was, like, if it's taught at all, and if so, how much? And then
Sure.
we can continue.
Well,
and, any further discussion beyond that. But let's hear what we have first, so people aren't, out there operating off of,
Sure.
some fallacy.
Happy to provide information. I have provided the board with some information about this before, but happy to do it again. And I think the proposed agenda item for the subcommittee is a little more detailed than what we've gotten into before. So I'm a big fan of logic as a humanities student in college who got to take logic instead of mathematics courses. So to Dr. Hady's, probably her sadness, but I was able to do that and did take a number of them. So you are correct that they typically fall under philosophy, which I want to just address that second. First, I'll address where we have any of this in the curriculum, which actually falls in the 11th grade English curriculum and American literature, which is a required course for all students at the high school. The reason it is in that course is that the Common Core standards in 11th and 12th grade, which is like a banded standard, all the standards in 11th and 12th go together. They could be taught in either grade or in both grades. There are a couple of standards that speak to reasoning. The word logic is not specifically used, but I'll just explain the standards. There are two of them that work in tandem. One of them is a reading standard, and the other is a writing standard. So actually, in 11th grade English, as dictated by the Common Core standards, the standard 8 in reading is actually to look at seminal U.S. documents, including historical documents like Supreme Court cases. I'm just reading from the standard, including premises, purposes, and arguments in works of public advocacy. And sometimes there's confusion about why that is placed in an English standard, but it's for the reason that you are describing, which is, as it says here, to delineate and evaluate the reasoning used in those texts. So part of the curriculum in 11th grade, this is Unit 3, if any of you or anyone at home wants to take a look, is we incorporated that standard, made it essentially the core standard for that unit, and then it works in tandem with the writing standard for that unit, which makes sense, which is around writing arguments. So writing arguments to support claims, but it goes on to say using valid reasoning as well as relevant and sufficient evidence. So in terms of where it is included in our existing curriculum, that is really the place to find it. And if you take a look at the tasks and assessments that we require, all students take American literature, 11th grade English essentially. It does require them to look at reasoning and to then incorporate it in their own writing assignment. So that is the primary place where it exists, where all students would have to take it. The other major place is in a course that I taught, which is AP Language and Composition, which is an option if an 11th grade student, in lieu of the course I just mentioned, would like to take an advanced placement course. They can take AP Language and Composition, which is essentially a course that, on a much deeper level, addresses what you have talked about. Because I've taught the course, we have delved much more deeply and rigorously into some of the topics that you mentioned. Different logical fallacy, different sort of problems in logic, as well as doing the same thing that is required in the standards, which is to apply those processes of thinking to mostly nonfiction texts. We don't do a lot of work around fiction with it. So that is basically where it currently resides. So if you want to take a look. Regarding the other, some of the other parts of your inquiry and sort of the proposal to add it to the curriculum subcommittee meetings for further discussion, I want to provide the board and the public with a little bit more information before you decide if this is something that we want to do, and I'm happy to do it if it's something that we decide to do. So as you mentioned, typically a logic course is taught as a philosophy class. As you probably know, we don't have certification in philosophy, and even for teachers who teach social studies or history or English, it's actually not necessarily one of the core degrees that you would need to be eligible to teach those courses. Other kinds of degrees and things like geography, sociology, anthropology, psychology are listed, but I just wonder, and we may have people with a background in philosophy, in terms of having personnel who are knowledgeable enough to teach a course at that level. Of course, our teachers are scholarly and they're bright and they can learn, but typically for most of our courses, people become certified in an area in which they've had a lot of coursework. But we don't have philosophy as an option. We don't have an intro to philosophy course or an intro to logic course. I actually checked with 8 other school districts just to inquire as to whether this was something maybe that other people were doing and that we could look to as an example, and none of the 8 offer it. And that I did look at sort of like a spectrum of districts in terms of size, demographics, location. None of them offer it. A couple of the people with whom I spoke said that they've never heard of it being offered in high school. The other thing I did was I looked into whether we could offer it through another avenue, such as our early college experience courses, advanced placement courses, or even a new option in Connecticut, which is the Cambridge International Certified Courses. None of those 3 offer a logic course. So advanced placement, early early college experience, and advanced placement, none of them have a course that we could offer. And I think the ECE courses, I just talked to Chris Todd, who's running that at UConn. I think they offer over 80 courses, and they don't offer this one. And then I went ahead and looked at some colleges and universities locally and other ones, and it is, again, mostly taught under philosophy. So I just wanted to be able to provide information that could help answer questions or contribute to some of the decision-making. I'm happy to answer any other questions.
Ms. Claes?
I recall on the last curriculum committee, we didn't have it for reading, it's not ready for reading, but you talked about the new structure of the social studies course. And to me, that felt very much like students would think about how they address many of these topics to go to create their little projects that they were doing throughout the year. Am I incorrect in that?
No, I mean, I think there would be I think they would get into that to some degree, especially in U.S. history. It's running at the same time as this 11th grade English class or the AP Language and Comp, so it's all in the same year. There is a very close look at those foundational U.S. documents related to the Constitution, related to case law, Supreme Court law, and normally you would need to study that and look at it through a lens of logic in order to really understand it. As written so far, and it's in its very nascent phases, as I told the subcommittee, pre-draft. I don't recall us having a specific task that is related to that. We could consider it. The other place where it would probably come up, and I'm not sure if it would be as explicitly done as it is in the English courses that I talked about, would be the AP Government course, where again, you have to really think about and think critically about some of these things. But in terms of like the explicit teaching of this, it currently falls under the courses that I mentioned: American Literature, AP Language and Composition.
Any other?
It's also taught during 10th grade English classes. I remember in my sophomore year we had multiple units just learning logical fallacies and how they apply to past documents and how to write, avoiding using logical fallacies, but also using logical fallacies to make our argument more sound. So it is still implemented in other classes.
There's a 10th grade standard that is similar, like in the same vein as this one. Which it's possible it would be brought in 10th grade because it is a 10th grade standard as well. This standard is really specific to American documents, which is why we wrap it into American literature rather than like 12th grade English, where we do more of a world literature kind of a approach. But it is possible that it could come up in 10th grade or even 9th grade, because those standards are banded together. 9th and 10th are together, 11th and 12th are together. The really explicit intentional teaching around it is in 11th grade for sure.
Thank you.
But I'm happy to answer other questions. I tried to gather as much information as possible to give you what you might need.
Well,
That's been great. Mr. Panos?
yeah, I'd like to know to what extent it is. I know that a colleague of mine, his son, was a philosophy major and he moved to Singapore and set up, and in their school system, they begin the teaching of logic very young in the elementary as a consequence of this, and he's actually written textbooks, appropriate for the level. This is one of the highest performing school, systems in the world, and I just say that it can begin, in high school, early high school. I mean, if you get too young, I don't know how you can teach this because it's too abstract, but you give it by examples. You tell by example, faulty and generalizations and things like that. So I'm sure you do teach as part of English, like you mentioned. The question is just how much, and there are certain basic things. I don't know. If two views conflict, they can both be wrong, but they can't both be right. That sort of thing.
So you're asking what amount of time is spent on it, or when you say how much?
Well, I'd like to know, how many of the fallacies, and there's a deductive, which those are the easiest, then there are inductive fallacies, so which are more difficult and, and take a little time, but this can be handled as part of, like you say, as part of the English. It typically was, and at least when I went to high school, that's the way it was handled. And it's extremely valuable, like I say, for understanding all sorts of arguments that are floating around today and daily discourse. But also, from the point of view of language, there should be a section on the proper rules, let's say, of defining a concept. I mentioned that earlier. Defining a concept, in other words, there's the rule of fundamentality. When you give a definition, a formal definition has to have a genus and species, just like in biology or things like this. You give the general topic, general area that you're talking about, and then the specifics, and then there's that it has to be broad enough to take in all the examples, but not so broad as to include things that are not there. And so, how this is done is quite an art, and it speaks directly to the idea of English, command of language, let's just say. So, if if you have a fuzzy idea, only a very vague idea of what a concept means, it's going to cause a lot of confusion you can get. So I think that should be added to it. But I would like to know how much, is being, what specifically is taught, which fallacies. As for a course taught at a high school level, I don't know whether this is logic associated with math or computer science, but at Farmington High School, they list a logic course. So maybe you could look at that.
Be happy to reach out to them. They
may
weren't one
not
of
be
the 8
what I'm
districts.
talking about. Did you check that one?
No, they were not one of the 8 districts that I contacted. Just in terms of how much, within the curriculum itself, we have not defined specific types of fallacies or so on that you're talking about. All I can say, according to what we have, is there are 5 units. 1 unit is dedicated to what I mentioned, so it's
Okay.
1/5 of the curriculum.
There's only
Might
5
see my
units?
math skills? I think I got that from my logic class in college.
Yeah, you can.
1/5 of the, they're also just talking about, if we do address the idea of extended definitions or operational definitions of things, the final assessment for the entire course, the culminating assessment is really asking students to define what it means to be American. That's the actual assessment. The students are asked to further investigate and study the many texts you have read in this unit, so bringing in multiple perspectives and sources, identify and analyze interconnected keywords, ideas, themes, et cetera, that explore the idea of what it means to be American. Consider all alternative and opposing perspectives, and so on and so forth. So obviously, this is a culminating assessment, not only for the 5th unit, but the whole year. So presumably,
Right.
the teacher, looking at the previous tasks, would be setting this up through instruction that would obviously need to be tailored to students being able to do this. And it includes students going back to other texts and assignments that they've done and drafting this through multiple iterations before submission at the end of the course. So we do ask them to do that. I don't know if that speaks exactly to what an example of what you're asking, but
Well, I can just send you, I have logic books too, it's not a topic that changes much, since Aristotle wrote the book, but, I can just send my suggestions as to what fallacies should be well understood. I mean, it's straight out of logic textbooks. I think it's important to understand just how, when I say definitions, I'm not really referring to something, a question like what does it mean to be an American? Somebody who just I'm talking about just any word, any concept, a table, what is it, justice, what do you mean by it? You have to have a clear idea, and why it's important, it's a bit much to cover here, but, that sort of thing is maybe in the curriculum.
well, whatever the board decides, if the decision is made to move it to subcommittee, be happy to continue to address it. Just tried to give you any information you might need to make that decision, and you just let me know if that's something that you're going to bring forward so that we can be prepared and move forward from there.
Sure.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, so I was in favor of the motion to bring forth on behalf of the executive committee because Mr. Panos did bring this up as a topic. I was under the impression that we would have some discussion and then flesh it out in the committee meeting. I believe Ms. Feynman has fleshed it out along with some support from the student rep. I'm of the belief my caucus is very content of what Ms. Feynman has presented to us at this point. So if there's anybody on the caucus want to add on to it, I believe that my caucus will probably be not in support of sending this to curriculum at this point, as she has already stated out exactly what's going on here in the meeting. So unless there's something additional that's needed, Mr. President, thank you for allowing everyone to have a say at it. I'm sure Mr. Panos may have a response to me, which I will be open to, considering that this was a motion. So I'm open to hear what he has to say.
Well,
Mr. Panos?
Well, all I would do is just make a motion that it be sent to and be considered, just take a vote.
So, ready for a vote?
Yeah.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded on adding this logic agenda item to the Curriculum Committee of January 6th. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Abstentions? Motion fails. 3.
2. Let's see.
It was 2.
2.
Two.
Yes, it was.
2,
6-0.
6-0.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Ms. Feynman. Thank you, President Fury. Before I get into the rest of my report, there were a couple other questions that I know Mr. Panos had raised, and I want to make sure those get addressed.
Yep.
First was the possibility of adding a CAD course to Sage Park curriculum. And with that question tied into it is actually how many current offerings are there in the CTE department, career and technical education, for folks who don't know that, at Sage Park. So I have Principal Jorgensen, and we also have our acting assistant superintendent, Dr. Haiti, to help answer that question. Let me get up.
So I'm going to start with the CAD course. So we do offer part of our graphics design curriculum in 6th grade, a course called Tinker CAD. So this is an introduction to CAD in 3D design and helping students understand what it takes to create kind of an easier, kid-friendly 3D product, and then actually sending it to a 3D printer, whereas they can actually see a 3D product being printed out. So that is kind of the introduction of CAD. And then they go into 7th grade, whereas they do have an architecture design course, whereas they get introduced to the principles and idea of blueprint and of the principles of the CAD system that if they continue on that pathway at the high school, then they will get to work with the actual CAD software like SolidWorks or AutoCAD or the different softwares that is used at the high school. And Principal Jorgensen, if you want to add anything to that.
I think you said it, so are there any questions, I guess?
Are there any questions? And
No, I guess you're covered. You do CAD. That's
the question had come up first, and just to let the public know, it came up in an executive committee about the potential of CAD, and the question was, we know a lot more, I think, about the high school, CTE types of offerings. And I remember the day when my kids were at Sage Park, there was a program called TAP, and there was different offerings that you cycled through. And back then, when my kids, typing or keyboarding was actually keyboarding, not typing. That's my generation, but there was a keyboarding course that was offered. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. See you later. Okay. I'd like to give a thank you to the Windsor Lions Club for hosting their annual party for our Sage Park Middle School students. Students in the Sage Park Leos traveled to Windsor Lots on December 7th to attend the annual party. They were treated to a dancing with a band, lunch, and ice cream. Santa and Mrs. Claus stopped by to visit with the students and distribute gifts. Students had a wonderful time. The December Coffee Talk was held on Tuesday, December 13th. We had a great turnout of community members and parents. The next Coffee Talk is on Tuesday, January 17th, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. in the L.P. Wilson Auditorium. All schools and district offices will be closed from Monday, December 26th through Monday, January 2nd, 2023. District offices will be closed on Monday, December 26th, Tuesday, December 27th, and Monday, January 2nd. Winter sports are underway, and I'm encouraging students, staff, and the community to come out and support our teams. We are really excited to have Brittany Huggins, the class of 2007, back home as the head coach of the girls' basketball team. She was most recently the head coach at Hall High. And I know it was already mentioned, the games that are underway in this past week, but I just want to add in there, I was excited to see Brittany win the first home game, opening game for the girls. The varsity team won, beating Newington. And then the next night, or later in the week, the boys opened up their season and won their game as well. And then the boys played in the tournament over the weekend at Trinity for Doc Hurley. And the big game, it was games all day long, but the big game was 8 o'clock in the evening game. And I know Mr. Lockhart's not agreeing. However, it was my understanding from the crowds that were there all day, I was not, so this is secondhand information, that the games earlier in the day were not exactly thrilling at all to the audience. And so Windsor and Bloomfield, this renewed rivalry, played one incredible game. It was high speed, intense, right from the tip-off. And it did not stop to the very end of the game. It was a very, very, good game. We are looking forward to the 2 games this season that we have to play Bloomfield, one here and one at their house as well, besides all the other games. But our teams, they're working hard. I'm looking forward to seeing lots of games. Coach Huggins, coach, and obviously Coach Smith, he's been doing it for years. And I would like to see more students and more staff out. I don't like going to the gym, I'm just telling you now, and seeing more visitors. I don't like it. So I've always been quite vocal about that. I don't like it. So, and I tell teachers I don't like it, so I'm calling everyone out. You can't just see your students and know them in the classroom. That's something I learned from my mentors when I started teaching in 1992 in Virginia. Students need to see you in all facets of their life. So if it's a play, it's a dance, right? You need to be there if you can. You can't tell me you can't make one game. So it's more than you coming, showing up, teaching a class. You need to make sure you're a part of your students' lives. So I'm expecting to see more staff. And I look for staff when I go to the games. So I know people are feeling called out, and you are, but that's what it's supposed to be. We're supposed to be, inclusive. And we talk about SEL, it's not just to have a catchy phrase or an acronym. As I said, we're looking to be engaged with the whole student. And students aren't just people who turn in homework assignments and take tests in our classrooms. They do other things. And I guarantee you, from my 30 years experience, if you show students that you're interested in the other parts of their life, it makes your classroom very different. And with that being said, I want to wish everyone happy holidays and a blessed new year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions for the superintendent? Seeing and hearing none. The next, I'm looking for a motion.
Move the Board of Education accept for a second reading the budget assumptions for fiscal year 2023-2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Lockhart, second by Mr. Panos. Discussion. Do we know if there's any changes on the budget assumptions?
None. No, I said none. For the record, none. As it's finance chair.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Let's see.
No.
10 seconds, and move on.
Right.
Anything, Paul?
Right.
I don't think so. I think we're facing, kind of a tough budget time here.
Right.
I don't see anything here that we can add. So we can discuss it. We can get into fights during the budget season, I think.
Mr. President, I wouldn't call them fights. I would call them constructive debate, spirited debate. I think we need to be very mindful that in the spirit of discussion, it's not going to be a typical year where it's going to be 1%, 2%. If you're looking across the state, you're looking at increase between 8 to 12%, depending on where you are, and that's just if you roll over what you currently have. So are we going to sharpen the pencil? I believe we will sharpen the pencil, but we have to prepare ourselves to the fact that if we try to do anything in the area of 1, 2, 3%, it could be not well. So that will probably put us toward the level of intense debate rather than spirited debate. But at the same time, we have to make sure that we preserve what we have. And obviously, I'm looking forward to working with the entire board, and as well as especially you, Mr. Panos, to make sure that we have some agreement and that we understand understand the pulse not only of the entire board but the entire town of what they're looking for. I don't want to have multiple referendums, and I want to make sure that we're lock in step with the town council, our superintendent, as well as the town manager. It costs a lot of money to do multiple referendums, and we want to make sure that we get it right and understand the true pulse of the town. So that will be my goal. All these meetings will be televised, and they will be on Tuesdays instead of one on Saturday. So it'll give everybody a chance to get their questions in week after week after week. With the understanding that if we have to take that fourth meeting just to clean stuff up, I'm prepared to do that. But I believe that we can really get this productively done in 3 meetings and be prepared to present it to the town council. But it's going to take all of us to, one, study, be prepared to do our homework, and more importantly, be prepared to discuss it not only with our town committees, but with the citizens of the town. That's very important. Thank you.
Further discussion?
Yeah.
Mr. Panos?
I think the problem we're facing, well, you know, kind of illustrates what happens when the federal or state government come down with special money that they dispense onto the districts, and then what happens is that you spend it, and then you have you now have a new program which they said well, now you're on your own, and that sort of thing. You know, that may be a bit of what the problem that we're having here, that they paid for the things that we wanted, and then you know, and now we have a tough time facing us. Maybe, I don't know. We'll find out during the budget process. But often, you know, sometimes you'll get grant money, and then the grant money runs out, and you end up talking about, you know. So.
May I talk?
Yeah, go ahead.
Ms. Batchelder?
So, Dr. Hill and I have been pounding away at the budget the past 2 weeks, 1 week, and unfortunately, that's not actually our issue. It has nothing to do with the grant money. It's true costs going up. It's locked in rates for electricity. I mean, we're looking at $500K just for our utility bills. It's not even, we're not even talking grants. So.
And I was on a call with other chairs recently, other boards of education, and they were talking, alluding to what Mr. Lockhart said, the idea of just, if you take our budget, what we're doing now, and roll it over, before looking to add anything or even trying to replace any of the federal funds, it was, you know, 5 to 6% in one district. And so it was insurance, it was utility costs, including fuel, and we know inflation is going at 8%, and so that's affecting almost everything that we procure. It's just a reality that we're living in, and so there will be some spirited discussions that we'll be having. So.
Right. One of our biggest drivers, unfortunately, is our special ed out-of-district tuition costs, and the number of students has not changed. It's these private out-of-district placements. They are that's where, if the state wants to really actually help districts, that's where they gotta hit. They have to put some kind of threshold or cap on what these out-of-district placements can charge the districts. We're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars per child.
Yeah.
Mr. Wollaston?
Just in response to that, is there anything we can do to possibly like try to get them back in district, or can we visit and see if they're actually being like given what it costs to send them out there?
I mean, we bring students back all the time that are ready to come back to district. We start having those conversations once they are starting to do better. But there are just some students whose challenges and needs are so much more than we can support. And then we also have to factor in that when we started this school year, I think it was 3 or 4 kids who moved in within DCF care that we had to account for. So there's situations like that that are very challenging. I think each year we do bring back 3 to 4 students, and we probably outplace about 3 to 4, meaning like we actually put them out. So we're bringing them back in, but we're finding new students who have other needs, and then we're also having them move into our district, which is challenging because that's hard to account for.
And do you have anything else? And I think, again, in what can we do about it, one of the things that CABE has been advocating, and many of us for a while, and we have to be thinking about not using the same strategy every year that doesn't somehow get us anywhere, and that is to remove the excess cost grant cap. So for people who are watching, we pay 4.5 times, I believe, before the state has any responsibility, and in theory, they're supposed to pay the balance, which is often still a lot of money, and they cap that at probably every year it's slightly different, but about 80%. And I know Mr. Lockhart's testified about that before, and especially what the impact is for Windsor in that regard. But it's a problem in every district. So unlike sometimes when you can pit one district against the other, this affects everyone. And so and it's, again, the federal government comes with the mandate to begin with and that doesn't provide money for it. And then the state provides some money after, after the local districts pay the lion's share, and then they don't even live up to their requirement of paying their fair share. So it will be, again, another opportunity, and I've said before the need to work with unions, CASBO, CAPS, as well as CABE, and our local RTCs and DTCs throughout the state. This affects every community that we don't know what's going to happen year to year because of the state not living up to their responsibility. Any other discussion on the side of Mr. Wollaston?
Yeah, I just wanted to know if there's ever been any conversation or discussion on possibly running our own program here instead of outplacing students, just to see what it would cost in comparison to what we're sending kids out.
Yeah, we do have some specialized programs and classrooms within district. Our Spark program, for example, we get a lot of students back into the Spark program because it is small student, ratio to each teacher and a lot of resources, and it often kind of becomes like a stepping stone to the way back to the high school. As far as our in-district programs that, may specialize in like discrete trial instruction or behavioral challenges, we've lost a lot of the staff who ran those programs, and we're really in like a rebuilding time, but also, staffing has been challenging for all of our positions, and unfortunately, it's hard to get someone to work with certain populations of students. So when we're getting special ed candidates, they don't always want to take those more challenging roles. But it has been a goal of our department to rebuild some of our programming so we can keep more students in district. But there's just a lot of things we have to consider, even space being one of the problems we're running into.
So that will kind of be my last point on this, not just to you, but to the entire room almost. We have to kind of look at, I feel, the cost comparison at some point, because we can point fingers at the state and say, hey, look what they're doing with their prices, look what they're doing with their prices, or we can say, this what it would cost us to better support these people or make ourselves more marketable in this area, so we can get people to come here and people can say, hey, maybe I get paid a little better to do special ed here than for CREC or something like that, or any one of these programs, because at the end of the day, we're paying for it. Either way it goes.
I want to clarify that, though. I get you, and I understand that, but just so we're clear, right, it's not just pointed at the state, because you had initially asked, bringing people back, and Ms. Wachowski, she answered part of it. So Ms. Batchel and I have been looking for the last couple of years with some of those ESSER funds to see if we could actually get our own space. You actually need a building. You need the building first. That's actually the biggest holdup. So staff is one thing, but we don't have a building. And I can also say, I know, there are some predicaments or positions that people will think of, but the reality is the people in those specialized programs don't always necessarily get paid more money, so that's not really the issue. The bigger issue is that those are private entities, and for lack of a better term, for the general public, there's no rent control. So they can just keep charging more and more. And for the number of students that are actually outplaced, I'm sure people would think it's like, 100 or more. It's like, what is it, like 50 kids?
48 to 52.
48 to 52 kids are equal about 2 million?
No, we're about 6.
Oh, sorry, I was off. So I'm just saying, that's how bad it is. So we've been looking, trust me, I've been looking for 2 years, like, man, we can get our own building, we can do this ourselves. You can't get property. Like, there's no reasonable property. So it's so many hurdles, and we'll keep looking, and we can't just do, I even looked at the temporary buildings, right? You go get a little portable trailer, but that's only gonna hold so many. And so, doing a cost-benefit analysis of whether or not, if we can only bring in 10 students because of this limited amount of space, are those gonna be the students who are at the level that will pay for that building? So we are looking. But this is not a new argument. As President Fury said, it's not an argument from a district at all. It's not even an argument from Connecticut. It's an argument for the nation, right? So if you try to argue against it, you look like you don't care about all your students, but it's like you get put in this tenuous situation where you're being told to pay for something that constantly increases, and you're never given the money for it. Like, no one's ever caught up across the nation. IDEA has really put a bind on people for a couple decades plus, and it just continues to build and build. Eventually, the bubble will burst. It's going to, because you just can't afford to pay. I predict what districts are going to do, and I think they're already doing it a lot of places. They'll just start violating the law and just not offering the services to students, and that's going to be terrible. But so it's gonna be more. I mean, I agree with you. Districts should look for more inventive ways to do it, but it's a nonstop problem. It just keeps coming. And if you have any buildings out there that you want to make a deal on, we are all open to, you donate a building for $1, take that tax deduction.
The other point for the out-of-districts also is that it's not a certified unionized teaching position. They don't have to abide by any of those certification rules. So we're paying all this money, and that doesn't mean they're
That's the
actually
question I have as
certified
well.
teachers.
So we don't have the ability to just run a program. It would have to be like because you know how some like schools they're not really schools, they're just programs. It would have to be.
I'm with you, Mr. Wilson. Like, yes, we do it. The minute we do it as a school system, as Ms. Batchelor was saying, now we got to meet all the certification requirements. So that's something we talk about all the time, right? People are like, oh, my child's going to be in this program over here because there's a pretty name like, Brighter Horizons or Grassy Fields. But you don't know what you're getting in that room. Like, you don't know. Like, I can guarantee you for the most part it's not going to be a certified person. There'll be a few at the top, and so you're just going there. And, Ms. Wachowski has shared with us, you're not always getting this incredible service, but they get to charge what they get to charge. So if we can find a building, again, as I said, to the community, you have a building, your heart, it is a season of giving.
Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion to accept the budget assumptions as a second reading, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Abstention, motion carries 800. Next item is the revised 2023-2024 Windsor High School Program of Studies. there a motion?
Just making sure it's lining up here. Move the Board of Education approve the proposed additions to the 2023-2024 Program of Studies for a first reading and waiving the second reading.
Is there a second? Second. We're going to have a presentation.
I'll read the background real quick.
Is there a second?
Good.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, so
Motion made by Mr. Lockhart, second by Ms. Taylor. Mr. Lockhart.
background of this is that the 2023-2024 Windsor High School Program of Studies was approved by the Board of Education at the October 18, 2022 regular meeting. We recommend adding 2 new exciting courses to the 2023-2024 Program Studies, which is Introduction to Special Education and Data Science, with descriptions below for the board to review. And it's my understanding we're going to have a presentation on this.
So the first course that we're asking to add to our course of study is an ECE, Introduction to Special Ed course. So that is a half-credit course with for students to also be able to get college credit for completing that course. This is a basic intro to special ed for students who might want to explore a teaching career. Whether you want to be a regular ed teacher or a special ed teacher, it's just a nice introduction to, special ed education. The other course that we're proposing is a data science course, and I have Ms. Maggie Maines and Mr. John Kosakis here to talk to us more about the data science course.
So one second before you guys, just want to pitch in on the ECE course, right? Because I want the public to hear it, and I want students. I know those students who are out there watching board meetings. So
After they finish their studying.
Yeah. Right. So before you do your courses for next year, provided this course is approved, even if you're not looking into going into teaching, the course is a UConn course. You'll get the 3 credits, and it'll just be considered a gen ed. So it's a win-win for a student taking the course. So taking the course during your senior year at the high school or next year, if it's approved, as Dr. Haiti said, you're exploring one facet of the teaching field. This is particularly special education. If you say, nope, this is definitely not for me when you're done and everything's passed, you have the 3 credits on a transcript at UConn, and they'll be just considered gen eds if you're not in the School of Ed. So I don't want anyone out there who thinks, well, I'm not interested in teaching at all, or if I take it and I decide not to go into teaching, it's a wasted course. No, it's not. It's 3 credits on a transcript, and you get to use those 3 credits as gen eds.
And I can just piggyback on that. I went to an expensive private college, and I waited until my senior year there to decide that I wanted to go into education. So that would have been lovely, and maybe saved me some money if I realized in high school that I wanted to be a teacher.
Good evening. My name is John Gazakis. I've met a couple of you before. I'm a math and computer science teacher at Windsor High School. This is my 2nd year there. I wanted to talk to you this evening about data science in terms of the field and the kinds of experiences that I feel like our students should be getting in even more modern education than they already are. I wanted to start, I wrote a brief description for the building administration that I feel pretty well sums up the need for this course. Data science is a burgeoning occupational field in which the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics predicts employment to grow 36% in the next 10 years, compared to the 5% growth averaged across all occupations. Data science is a blended field of mathematics, statistics, and computer science that modernizes, scales, and otherwise improves historical statistical methods to effectively analyze the incredible amounts of data that are available today. This field is applicable to nearly every modern business, and people with these skills are in high demand to help companies of every size utilize data to grow and become better. The vision of Windsor Public Schools seeks to, quote, prepare our students to make intellectual and civic contributions to Windsor and the global community. Some students may choose to pursue data science and will be well-placed to accomplish these things. But even those who may not continue their education in this field beyond their public education at Windsor High School will have developed a basic toolkit that can help them be more analytical and growth-oriented wherever they end up. People with these skills in the scientific community are typically referred to as citizen data scientists, people who are versed in data science and are able to use it, but aren't necessarily in the field itself, and help to drive a lot of change around the world today. I believe that Windsor should be looking to develop students to become citizen data scientists, to further prepare and encourage them to make those intellectual and civic contributions. Something I noted after I wrote that is I think it's become really evidenced in the direction that Windsor High School has gone in the couple years I've been here, which is we're very data motivated. We're trying to use the data available to us to do the best we can for the students. And I think the people that I work with in the math department have a certain affinity with data sciences. It's a very closely related field. And the things that they've been able to do with it just in this past year and a half that I've been there have been very impressive. And I think that those kinds of skills benefit anyone in pretty much any field. I'm happy to take any questions about what this would entail. It's kind of a broad idea, what is data science? But the fact is, we live in a world where everything is data, especially with technology. And I think it is a perfect intersection of computer programming, which I love to teach, math, which I also love to teach, and the real world, which we all live in. So do you all have any questions about it?
Questions?
I don't know if I have any questions. It certainly isn't it. Sounds like a great course. Maybe it's a substitute for logic.
Other questions or comments? I think you piqued all of our interest when you talked about 36% versus 5% of where this can go.
Yeah.
And it's consistent with what we've been doing too in looking at vocational opportunities. What kinds of skills when kids come out of our schools, whether they're ready to go into the job workforce, college, or the military, whatever they're choosing, that they have an idea, and we've created different pathways throughout our programs that students are really ready and not struggling when they get out, because it's a very good jobs market for people even coming out of high school who've gotten certain skills. I would think the robotics program could probably help with this too.
Could probably. Just to add on some statistics in that sense, there's two main fields that the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics considers to be a part of data science. The first is data scientist as a profession. That's the one with the 36% per year outlook. That's equates currently to 13,500 new jobs every year available in that field. And some people in some circles think that that's maybe a low ball even. Technology just keeps getting more important. The other part is database administrators and architects. I feel like we all hear the word database thrown around a lot these days. The Windsor Public Schools IT department knows it very well because everything we do is based around databases. That one has an estimated growth of 9% per year, but that still equates to 11,500 jobs. And students that take this course are kind of prepped and get a taste of what either of those sections of the field look like. And most importantly, since it's so used by businesses these days, it could be smaller local businesses. We're right next to Hartford, which is considered by some to be the insurance capital of the world. They're probably the ones that use it more than anyone else. I think potential job shadowing opportunities, if this program can grow beyond just a course, is kind of unparalleled in terms of our location and what's available to us. And we have some incredible students that could probably do some really great things with that.
Any further questions or comments? Ms. Galinsky.
Just quickly, I just want to thank you for this because I think this is absolutely incredible, especially for those students who want to be math majors, because they go, what do I do with this after? And they're not even familiar with this because I feel like they're lacking these courses even at a college level.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. So when I see here that you're using Python, I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. Like, you should be doing that. And so introducing this in high school is absolutely fantastic. So thank you.
Yeah. And it ties in very well with the current computer science curriculum. Your student representative, Abby, is one of my AP computer science principal students this year. So she's learning a lot about Python as we go. But these things all tie in very well together. And the opportunities are to a certain extent endless. And there's a lot of potential to stay updated with this course and really provide the students a good foundation to figure some things out with.
Yep. And Dr. Haiti and I had attended a conference where there were a number of stakeholders in math education in the state, and they were, talking to us about making math more relevant and including like this data science course. So we had that in the back of our heads, and Mr. G comes up and was like, "What do you think about that?" And I'm like, "I love you. Yes, yes. Let's get this going." So we're very fortunate to have Mr. G and his love of computer science and data and math.
Yeah.
And he really can add a lot for our students.
And I think just to tack on with the whole, like, colleges haven't even really picked up on this. I think they're starting to, and so I think this is a prime opportunity for some of our students to get like a competitive advantage as they go into it. We briefly reviewed 3 curriculums in data science that are kind of widely available. One of them was sponsored by UCLA, one of them is sponsored by Brown. Colleges are very much trying to get in on this, and they recognize that the high school level is really important, and we have kind of a unique opportunity here.
Mr. Wollaston.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you as well, as this is the kind of thing that builds community. We're setting up kids to be able to actually live in Windsor, which is a big deal with what we see now with prices rising, and we're going into budget season, and we're all going to see how that's going to affect us now. And we have to be trying to put kids in a position to actually be able to come back to their home after they graduate college and be able to afford to live here. So I'd just like to say thanks for your efforts in building community here.
Anything else? Yes, we appreciate the presentation. I'm so sorry we're as late as we are here, so having you have to stay the whole time, but
All good.
appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem.
We have a motion. We have a motion on the floor. It was seconded. Yes. All those in favor?
Aye.
These 2 courses? Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries 8-0-0. Next item is committee reports. Are there any reports? We already had the policy votes. Next then is other matters. Regular Board of Ed meeting. The next regular meeting is Wednesday, January 18th, 2023 at 6:30. Superintendent presents the budget with a public forum and then a regular meeting. And that'll be here in the LPW boardroom. Next item is audience to visitor. Ms. Alexis? Is there anybody in the room who'd like to address the board? Will. Where there's a will, there's a way.
I'll keep it short and sweet. Aside from saying Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy Festivus, et cetera, down the road.
It doesn't sound very.
Yeah, Feats of Strength on that's on the 20, or that's on Friday is Festivus. That's one of my favorites. What I just want to say is, I'm wholly supportive, and I'm glad we can get curriculum and that we can get individuals. I've been saying that for the last year or so. I'd like to see a greater push for more programs like that. As Ms. Galinsky said, it's something that students can actually latch onto and say, hey, I can do something now. It's not just theory. It's not just something that, I got to get through. They can actually leave our school system and go on and be able to do something. So I very much want to have that continued. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alexis, one last time, is there anybody in the queue? Seeing and hearing none, I'm going to close audience to visitor without objection. Next is any final comments from the board? Looking at Ms. Darlene.
No, just happy holidays. Thank you.
Mr. Wollaston?
Happy holidays.
Mr. Halleck?
Happy holidays to everyone. Our students are going to be out and about over the next week, so just be careful as you're driving, and that's really all I have.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor?
Happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, happy Kwanzaa. Making sure to check in on folks, because it can, even though it's the holiday season, it could be very blue for some people. So check in on your neighbor and your family.
Thank you.
Just happy holidays. Enjoy them.
Mr. Lockhart?
I agree with you.
blue for some folks, and I can painfully relate to that, but happy holidays to everybody. Be safe and be well. I don't want to see you on the big red truck.
Mr. Piano?
That was depressing. No, it's just happy holidays. Well, I hope Santa Claus comes to your house regardless of who you are. Thank you.
Thank you. And I shout out to Abby for staying the whole meeting. I didn't even ask you if you wanted to leave halfway, so she stuck around. Uh-oh, uh-oh. We're in trouble. We're in trouble now. Yeah. Mr. G required it, he told me. Okay. Anything to add, Abby, since you're here? Okay. 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 Last thing, is there a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstentions. Motion carries 8-0-0. We are adjourned at 9:07.